In the darkest shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read ancient tomes. The order Abracast. We are the brave and bold.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Stigmata Studios presents The Jinn Jihad. The Jinn Jihad kicks your face with myths, mysteries, epic battles, suicide bombers, quirky characters, and divine power armor. In this epic graphic novel, the warrior archangels descend on a city in chaos. It's all-out war. The non-standard assembly battles an ancient terrorist organization, and their ultimate weapon, the corrected, magically enhanced, unstoppable monster, the Jinn. This graphic novel is a wild ride. It's one part distant Arab myth, one part Old Testament angelic vengeance, and one part unique heroic tough guys. Available on Amazon. Get more info on the Jinn Jihad and other titles at stigmatastudios.com.
With the chop of my hand.
The Abracast.
Talk to me, baby.
Occult. History. Conspiracy. Violence.
All right, welcome to the Abracast. I'm John, and I'm totally confused. I've been recording these out of order. Back in the day, it used to be I would record on Friday night and post that episode up on Sunday. But because some things have changed, I was like, what I need to do is I need to get like a week ahead. And that turned into 2 weeks ahead, and now I'm like, well, I could do this, and that would fit in better here. And it's probably ruining not that there's any continuity, when there's 2 or 3 part episodes, I get them all together for the most part. But, so if you're hearing about something now and then you hear about it later, you could be like, why did he just say that he did that this week when I heard about it 3 weeks ago? It's because something came up, bro. Something like this. So, hey, thanks everyone for tuning in. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for all your support. I'd like to encourage everyone to rate and review on iTunes. Speaking of, 5-star review, Clan Sunstar, thank you very much. Finally, a podcast from Pittsburgh that has everything I like. Well, mine is Dungeons and Dragons and games and like that. But outside of that, I found myself drawn to this podcast initially by seeing the Infinity Gauntlet episode. Why, thank you, sir, very much. That is an those episodes are unloved, except by Clan Sunstar. The Infinity Gauntlet episodes, where I said probably the most controversial thing I've ever said on a show when I called Thanos a cuck. This podcast just has the right amount of humor along with very well researched details about each episode. Keep up the awesome job. You have a follower for life. Thank you very much, Clan Sunstar. I appreciate it. So we can get out of that now. The website. Please check out the website, abracast.com. We have a new feature. This is going to be one of those things where he's like, it's still in 4 episodes. He's still calling this a new feature. We have a new feature called it's a featured topic section. So usually when I do episodes, I try to like rattle off the episodes that are linked subject matter, because we do jump around every week. We try to do a different portion, like the occult, history, or conspiracy, or violence. So it's not one long chain of like lectures or whatever. We do a little of each every month. So I've been trying to like list out the episodes that the episode you're listening to might be linked to, in hopes that you'll scribble it down or something, or remember it and go back and listen to the other episodes that you might like to listen to. So instead, what I'm doing is, I am doing that, but also in addition to, on the website, I have a featured topics sub thing where like every week I'll go through and I'll find all the episodes that ties into the one you're listening to, and I'll put them for streaming on the website, so you can listen to them all right from that page. Or at the bottom, it has a link to each podcast. Most of the big podcatchers. In any ways, it'll be written down. The titles are right there of the episodes that you want to find. So I just thought that might be easier than me just like rattling through the episodes that you might also want to listen to. Also on the website at the bottom, you can find links to my social media. So thank you guys. Find me there, and I'm thrilled to talk to you guys. I was able to help a couple people do some independent research recently, which was nice that they reach out to me for advice or help or clarification. The Patreon link. Nothing much is going on over there. I want to get these mugs printed. I want to get these mugs made with the oath on them. So that's there. It's waiting. Also got some ideas for bookmarks, t-shirts, that kind of stuff. Books. We're heavy on books here on the Abracast. So this week's topic, it's a little bit different. It ties into a lot of episodes that we talked about, but we're not in tinfoil hat. We're not in the tinfoil hat realm. We are actually going to be talking more on college textbooks, specifically relating to my fat fingers. I can't flip these pages fast enough. We're going to be talking about this Understanding Media and Culture, an Introduction to Mass Communications. I found this on the University of Minnesota M Library's website. We're going to be talking about media effect theories this evening. And we're going to wrap up with an example. We're going to wrap up with the real world example that I just had to wade into the battle on. I'm going to save that the way it's structured is that's going to be at the end. So if you want to just jump to that, and no, it's not a boring episode. We talk about media constantly. We talk about social media also constantly. We talk about how the media can push us, and we're going to be, at some given time, we're going to be talking about the Overton window and this kind of stuff. So this is basically going to be like a primer for like a new thread, the podcast, or not a new thread. It's going to be a primer for the next portion of this media manipulation thread is going on. So I found it really enlightening. I'm searching around for media manipulation stuff, and all I had to do was just change one word to media effect, and I found a ton of scholarly research on it. My dick got hard. So we're going to be talking all about this. So this evening, what I would like you to do is I would like you to observe the Abracast weapon of mass distraction formula. And I would like you to get a mason jar and fill it with ice. I would like you to take a shot glass and put 2 shots of the cheapest gin you can find in the glass. There's an asterisk next to this. The gin, no matter how cheap it is, can't eat through the glass because it has to be able to hold it in there. And then fill the rest of it up with tonic water or another asterisk, maybe diet tonic water. It depends on your lifestyle. And then with your sharpest magical blade, take a slice of a lime and put the lime sacrifice into your vessel. And then you want to mix it up with a chopstick or something. And then drink it with me. And let's sit back and learn about media effect theory. And thank you for spending your time with me. I appreciate it. So, as we go through these, as we talk about each of these items, I don't want you just to think about TV, or I don't want you just to think about cable news. But as we go through these, I want you to think about the web, piped right into your mind through your phone 24 hours a day. And I want you to not only think about that, but as we're expanding through these ideas, think also about fictional media. The fictional programs that you watch. I don't think that these items tend to be specifically about the news. Some of it is 100% totally about the news, but I think that some of the things we're going to be talking about, you can find everywhere, even in the comic books you read, except for the Jin Jihad. You're not going to find any media effect there. So we're going to start with, hold on, let's get through some of the ground. Let's get through some of the prerequisites before we actually get to media effect. What is media influence effects? They are those things that occur as a result, either in part or in whole, from media influence. They occur immediately during exposure to the media message, or they can take a long time to occur after any particular exposure. They can last for a few seconds or an entire lifetime. They can be positive as well as negative. They can show up clearly as changes, but they can also reinforce existing patterns. We're going to talk a lot about that. In which case, the effect appears as no change. They can occur whether the media have an intent or an intention for them to occur or not. They can affect individual people or all people in the form of the public. They can also affect institutions and society. They can act directly on target, a person, the public, an institution, or society. They can act indirectly. And finally, they can be easily observable, or they could be latent and therefore much more difficult to observe. So when we look across all the ways that scholars write about media effects, we can see that there are 8 issues that concern them. The first is timing. Think about this. In everyday life, most people think of media effects are the things that show up during media exposure or immediately afterwards. For example, if parents notice that their young children begin to rustle aggressively when they watch Saturday morning cartoons, those parents are likely to see a connection between the TV shows and their children's aggressive behavior. Of course, the media exert immediate effects. They also exert influence on people over the long term. when it takes a long time before we can see any evidence of an effect. Duration. Some effects last short time and then go away. Other effects are permanent. For example, Cindy may listen to the words of a new song on her iPod and remember those words for the rest of her life. Or she may not be able to remember them an hour later. The next one is valence. Is it good or is it bad? Am I right? Everyday life. In everyday life, people typically think the media effects are being negative, such as exposure to violence, leading to antisocial behavior. Or, I'm not going to start editorializing yet, but the media also exert positive effects. We can learn all kinds of useful things by reading newspapers, magazines, books, websites, etc. Change is the next one. When we think of the effects, we typically think of change, that is, change in behavior or a change in attitude. If there is no change, some people argue that there is no effect. But some effects, perhaps the most important and powerful media effects, show up as no change. For example, most advertising has its purpose the reinforcing of existing habits among consumers. Advertisers do not want their brand loyal customers to change. Instead, they want to reinforce existing buying behaviors. If we ignore the reinforcement effect, there is no change in behavior. We will have too narrow of perspective on media effects. Intention. When the media industries are criticized for negative effects, one of their defense strategies is to point out that they did not intend to create a negative effect. For example, when the media is criticized for presenting too much violence in Hollywood movies, producers of these movies will say they're merely trying to entertain the people, not teach them to behave violently. However, there are many effects that occur even though the producers of those media messages, as well as the consumers for those messages, did not intend them to occur. The next one is level. Most of the research on media effects look at individuals on the target, individuals as the targets of the effects. Scholars have produced in very large literature documenting a wide array of effects on individuals, but the media also exert influence on a more macro level. Entities such as the public, society, and institutions. Direct and indirect. Sometimes the media exert a direct effect on individuals, while other times the effect is more indirect, such as through institutions. For example, a direct effect occurs when a person watches a political ad and decides to vote for a particular candidate. An indirect effect occurs when the media continually raise up the prices for political advertising so that candidates must spend much more time raising money, which makes them more beholden to organizations that give them the most money, which influences the policies they support most, which influences the service the government body provides, which influences us as individuals. Some people who are never exposed to political ads are affected by them indirectly. Manifestation is the last one. Some effects are easy to observe, such as when someone changes her behavior soon after being exposed to a particular media message. For example, Heather might be watching TV and see an ad for special offer for pizza. She grabs her phone and dials the number on the screen and orders a pizza. But other effects are very difficult to observe. This does not necessarily mean they are not occurring or that the media are not exerting influence. So there are 6 types of effects on individuals. These effects differ in terms of the part of the person affected or the character or of the experience of the effect. within an individual. The cognitive media effect occurs when media exposure influences a person's mental process, or the product of those mental processes. The cognitive effect that is easy to document is the acquisition of factual information from media messages, particularly from books, like comic books. Like the Jin Jihad, newspapers, television, news stories, and informational websites. Oh, I got a lube, bro. Beliefs. Beliefs have been defined as cognition about the probability that an object or event is associated with a given attribute. Simply stated, as a belief is faith that something is real or is true. Attitudes are judgments about something. For example, people see a character in a film and they make judgments about that character's attractiveness, his hero status, his likability, and so on. Affect refers to the feelings that people experience. This includes emotions and moods. The media can trigger emotions, especially fear, lust, anger, and laughter. The physiological effects. This one is super interesting to me. In an automatic bodily response, the body response can be either purely automatic, such as pupil dilation, blood pressure, galvanic skin response, or quasi-automatic, heart rate, sexual response. For example, when people watch action or adventure movies, their heart rates and blood pressures typically increase. Behaviors are the last one. They're typically defined as overt actions of individuals. Media effect researchers have concluded that a lot of studies in which they observe people's media exposure behaviors to see which media they use and how they use that media. Researchers also expose people to particular media messages, then observe their subsequent behaviors for things like aggression, use of advertised products, and debating of political issues. This is all what Facebook does. And after effects, there are these functions: acquiring a message, triggering a belief, emotion, or existing thought, altering a belief or knowledge, or reinforcing existing ideas or thoughts. And TV is really good at this last one due to its cyclical nature. It's reinforcing over and over and over. You know, it's been a joke in the house lately. It's the liberty, liberty, liberty. It's this commercial that's on constantly. You know what I'm saying? All right, so we're moving into the meat and potatoes of the episode. I know you're like, finally, right? This motherfucker. If he talks any more about these behaviors, I'm going to give him a stone cold stunner right there in his studio. Understanding Media and Culture, an Introduction to Mass Communication, the University of Minnesota M Libraries. It's online. It's very interesting read. Media Effect Theories. The first one, symbolic interactionism. Another commonly used media theory, symbolic interactionism, states that the self is derived from and develops through human interaction. This means the way you act towards someone or something is based on the meaning you have for a person or a thing. To effectively communicate, people use symbols with shared cultural meanings. Symbols can be constructed from just about anything, including material goods, education, or even the way people talk. Consequently, these symbols are instrumental in the development of the self. This theory helps media researchers better understand the field because of the important role the media plays in creating and propagating shared symbols. Because the media's power can construct symbols on its own by using symbolic interactionalist theory, researchers can look at the way media affects a society's shared symbols, in turn the influence of those symbols on the individual. So this reminds me of the episode that we did on sacred characters, the migration, inversion, and degradation of social justice warrior Star Wars, a few episodes ago. But I think that we're talking about the same thing here, where we have a set of these symbols in these characters, and we're looking at a media system that is taking these characters and turning them 180 degrees out of phase to degrade these characters. I think it's super interesting. Anyhow, it goes on to say, one of the ways the media creates and uses cultural symbols to affect an individual's sense of self is advertising. Advertisers work to give certain products a shared cultural meaning to make them desirable. For example, when you see someone driving a BMW, what do you think about that person? You may assume that person is successful or powerful because of the car he or she is driving. Ownership of a luxury automobile signifies membership in a certain socioeconomic class. Equally, technology company Apple has used its advertising and public relations to attempt to become a symbol of innovation and nonconformity, which is hilarious. Use of the Apple product, therefore, may have symbolic meanings and may send a particular message about the product's owners. My funniest story about Mac back in the day, Apple Macintosh, they had a series of computers. I don't even know if they're still around, but they supposedly handled graphics really well. And I was doing a portfolio. I was doing a job interview, actually, for a graphic design firm in downtown Cleveland. I remember being like at the very top of close to the top of the BP building in Cleveland. And we were talking about the differences between, the Macintosh, how the Macintosh handles graphics versus how the Windows machines or whatever handle graphics. And I had this slick fucking piece. I can't even remember what it was. Everything in my portfolio was slick at the time. Like I was very, very, I don't want to say cutting. I was very mainstream graphic design wise at that time because I was trying to get a fucking job. But I was saying that I don't think it much matters. And the guy was like, really? Like, everyone here thinks the Macs, they really handle graphics well. That was like the tag. They really handle graphics well. And I was like, well, look at this piece right here. It was printed out. Like, we weren't doing a portfolio on a tablet or something like I imagine they probably do nowadays. They were looking at my portfolio. It was printed and mounted. You walk around with a big stupid square fucking portfolio case. Anyhow, I was like, well, look at this piece here. Like, can you tell what I designed that on? And the guy is like, well, good point. Good point. And I didn't get that job. Media also propagates other non-commercial symbols, national and state flags, religious imagery, celebrities gaining shared symbolic meanings through their representation in media. So, this symbolic interactionalism, we're talking about status symbols, branding decisions, sexual imagery, I imagine sex is going to come up in more of these, but the sexy stuff, like, you know, the subway, the subway ads where the girl's basically going down on a sub, or like, you got milk, and it's like, it's always like this hot chick with like, I guess we'll say with like a milk mustache, I guess that's probably pretty old now. I don't know if everybody knows that anymore. Agenda setting theory. This is the one that I got. This is the one that I got into the most. Maybe in contrast to the extreme views of the direct effect model, we didn't go over the direct effect model because I don't buy into it really. The agenda setting theory of media stated that mass media determine the issues that concern the public rather than the public's view. Let me say that again. Not for you, for me. Get me back on track. Media, in contrast to the extreme views on the direct effect model, the media, or the agenda setting theory of media, stated that mass media determine the issues that concern the public rather than the public's views. What recently has happened that I could use as an example of this? Under this theory, the issue that received the most attention from media become the issues that the public discusses. Where have we seen something like this in like the last fucking couple weeks? Debates and demands action on. That's the big one. We're going to talk, and somewhere down the line, we're going to talk about this a media effect called the CNN effect. And this ties directly into it. So the media reports on something, the public discusses it, debates it, and then demands action on it. Where have we seen something like this just fucking like last month? This means the media is determining what issues and stories the public thinks about. Therefore, when the media fails to address a particular issue, it becomes marginalized in the minds of the public. I go on to say, media scholars who specialize in agenda setting research study the salience or relative importance of an issue and then attempt to understand what causes it to be important. The relative salience of an issue determines its place within the public agenda, which in turn influences public policy creation. Agenda setting research traces public policy from its roots as an agenda through its promotion in mass media and finally to its final form as law or policy. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're going to be talking about. That's, I think, the main staple of media effect. Basically, it's CNN is writing laws in a short thing. Okay, so agenda setting theory. It's also called gatekeeping. Another way to say all of this bullshit is just to say the media doesn't report reality. They filter and shape reality. Think about kids in cages. That shit's been going on for years. As a matter of fact, the kids in cages pictures that you see were totally either manufactured, one, or two, from like 2013 when Obama did it, and everyone knows that now. But by the time they were able to get that true real life information out, the fucking damage was done. If you find any kid crying in the media, that's what's going on here. Someone is going, you have to do something. Remember that. Remember that sentence. You have to do something. We have to do something. We have to do something. You'll hear it over and over and over again. And it is 100% all the time about this agenda setting theory. We don't know what to do. We don't know what we're going to do, but we have to do something. It's them push. That's media agenda setting theory. We could talk a lot about school shooting, especially this last one, with this idea as well. But we're going to move on. Cultivation analysis is the next media effect we're going to look at. This is another big one. The cultivation analysis theory states that heavy exposure to media causes individuals to develop an illusory perception of reality based on the most repetitive and consistent message of a particular medium. This theory most commonly applies to analysis of television because of the medium's unique, pervasive, repetitive nature. Under this theory, someone who watches a great deal of television may form a picture of reality that does not correspond to actual life. Now remember, we're talking about TV, but remember at the beginning of the episode, I asked you also to think about what social media, you have, sure, someone who watches a lot of media, a lot of TV, they might be confronted with this problem. But what about someone who checks Facebook every 15 fucking minutes? What about someone who checks Facebook when they're, it's so important to them that they have to do it when they're driving? I see it every day. I see it every fucking day. Where was I? Under this theory, someone who watches, I already said that, televised violent acts, whether those reported on news programs or portrayed in television dramas, for example, greatly outnumber violent acts that most people encounter in their daily lives. Thus, an individual who watches a great deal of television may come to the view that the world is a more violent and dangerous than it actually is. Now, I know there's probably a lot of you guys that are like, that's bullshit, fuck that. I, play Call of Duty 18 hours a day. I don't ever want to pick up an M1 Grand and fucking pop a fucking someone in their face. But this cultivation theory is there's actually scholarly readings that we're going to get into eventually. Gerbner in 1969 did the definitive work on cultivation analysis, and a lot of people has actually echoed it and expanded upon it. In the 90s, they were looking at crime statistics, real life crime statistics, versus the length of the coverage of crimes on news, on national news networks. And people, the way that they gauged this, they were not polling people. Yeah, maybe polling people. They were examining the situation, and they had a value. It was a MIP. It's called the most important, the most important problem in daily life. And in this study that took place, Americans increased in numbers vastly. Their MIP was a crime epidemic, even though every single indicator of real life crime was decreasing. The amount of national televised news coverage on crime was increasing, and therefore the people's MIP increased. We'll break that down. We'll get into it eventually, just not here. Like, I'm already fighting for time, but it's a fascinating report. So it's like, I'm not coming for your fucking video games. I'm just telling you what the news can do to your fucking brain is all I'm saying. Cultivation analysis projects involve a number of different areas of research, such as the differences in perception between heavy and light users of media. To apply this theory, the media content that an individual normally watches must be analyzed for various types of messages. Then researchers must consider the given media consumer's cultural background for individuals so correctly determine other factors that are involved in his or her perceptions of reality. For example, the social stabilizing influence of a family or peer groups influence children's television viewing and the way they process media messages. If an individual, family, or social life plays a major part in her life, The social messages that she receives from this group may compete with the messages she receives from television. So here we go. Just this is you want to know why the globalists want to tear your atomic family apart? Here you go. Because they could just get in there with no competing messages. They could just fucking tell you what to think. So also from cultivation theory, there's this whole phenomenon that's spawned from this. It's called the mean world syndrome, which I kind of talked about earlier. Violence-related content of mass media makes viewers believe the world is a more dangerous place than it actually is. We're going to move into the next one. Spiral of silence. We see this all over the place. The spiral of silence theory, which states... Oh, wait, you know what? Before I get into this thing, let's do this. We're going to do a spiral of commercial theory right here. Oh! Spiral of silence. This spiral of science. Oh boy, I'm going to have a fucking hard time with this. The spiral of silence. The spiral of silence. The spiral of silence. Okay, I'll be fine. Theory which states that those who hold a minority opinion silence themselves to prevent social isolation. This explains the role of mass media in the formation and maintenance of dominant opinions. I would like to offer I don't know. I'll wait. I'll do it later. As minority opinions are silenced, the illusion of consensus grows. And so does social pressure to adopt a dominant position. This creates a self-propagating loop in which minority voices are reduced to a minimum and perceived popular opinions side wholly with the majority opinions. For example, prior to World War II, many Germans opposed Adolf Hitler and his policies. However, they kept their opposition silent out of fear of isolation or stigma. Because the media is one of the most important gauges of public opinion, this theory is often used to explain the interaction between media and public opinion. According to the spiral of silence theory, yay! If the media propagates a particular opinion, then that opinion will effectively silence opposing opinions throughout an illusional consensus. The theory relates especially to public polling and its use in the media. So, you know, you don't have to look very far in history to see that polls are a joke. Flat out bullshit. This is also an echo chamber, but I don't think it's has to be a majority that does this. Like, I believe that a loud minority that maybe the media is part of, a loud minority creates a silent majority. Ooh. Yikes. I gotta put that on that t-shirt. All right, we're gonna get into another really interesting one called media logic. Not meteorological. Media logic. I fucked my whole headphone up. Sorry about that. Jeez, I don't know what the fuck's going on. I just can't get right. Okay. Media logic theory states that common media formats and styles serve as a means of perceiving the world. Today, the deep rooting... God damn it, I gotta get my shit together. The deep rooting of media in the cultural consciousness means the media consumers need engage for only a few moments. with a particular television program to understand that it is a news show, a comedy, or a reality show. Pervasiveness of these formats mean that our culture uses the style and content of these shows in a ways to interpret reality. For example, think about a TV news program that frequently shows heated debates between opposing sides of public policy issues. Crossfire with Patty Buchanan. Those who consistently watch this type of program. Media logic affects institutions as well as individuals. The modern televangelist has evolved from the adoption of the television style promotion by religious figures, while utilization of television in a political campaign has led to candidates to consider their physical image as an important part of a campaign. So this immediately made me think of War of the Worlds, where, it's framed as a breaking news program. And by the end, these fuckers were jumping out of buildings, killing themselves because they thought the aliens were invading. Which also makes me think of those Comedy Central news shows. It's like they look just like the news, but they're telling jokes. But people start citing the comedians that are telling the jokes as news. Like, maybe you can't subconsciously disengage from this news pattern or something. So here we go. We're gonna get into it. To wrap up the show, to end the show, we're going to talk about uses and gratification theory. I don't know if I should tell the story first and then do this. That's what I'm going to do. Okay. Hold on, I need to get my telephone. I need to get my mobile. All right, a friend of mine, who shall not be named, posted a news story. He posted this news story on his Facebook page, and he was like, "This fucking thing ever, this is the worst fucking thing," or what the fuck, this really happened, or something. And he posted this, and it's from a news organization called LGBTQ Nation, and it's called "Republicans Vote to Make It Illegal Nationwide to Ban Gays and Lesbians from Adopting." I don't know how much of this I'm going to read, but I'm going to read a little bit of it. The House Appropriations Committee on Wednesday passed the amendment allowing taxpayer-funded adoption agencies to deny LGBTQ families the ability to adopt a child based on religious objection. The amendment appears on a funding bill for Department of Labor, Health and Human Services and Education. It remains in the final bill. If it remains in the final bill, the amendment would cut 15% of federal adoption funding to states and localities that penalize adoption agencies that refuse to place children that conflict with the agency's, quote, sincerely held religious beliefs or convictions. The amendment also bars the federal government from refusing to work with adoption agencies that discriminate. The vote in the committee was 29-23 along party lines. The Representative Scott Taylor, Republican, Virginia, the lone Republican to vote against the amendment. So if it voted along party lines, garbage here. House Republicans are pandering to their far-right base at the expense of LGBTQ people. I should be reading... No, I don't want to... The House Republicans are pandering to their far-right base at the expense of LGBTQ people and children in need of a home. The Democratic National Committee, DNC, LGBTQ Media Director Lucas Acosta. Rather than focusing on empowering families or uniting children with their parents, Republicans on the House Appropriations Committee voted to give children's welfare agencies a license to discriminate against qualified potential parents. Well, let's get into that. Quote, let's get into that claim. Shall we? So, I was going to respond to my friend's post, but by the time I got to it, there has been like 300 posts, and they were all like, yeah, fuck these Republicans. Let's drag them through the streets and skin them alive. These motherfuckers, they would rather stand in the way of children receiving good parents because of their fucking gods. Like, literally, there was a level of incendiary hatred that was bananas, and I was like, I am not going to get into the middle of this. I'm not going to get dogpiled, because you can't argue with the fucking it's like these people read the headline and they were off to the races. They were subject matter experts on it. So I was like, well, let's take a look at this, man. I mean, like, man, this is fucked. So I Google searched it, and when I Google searched it, the thing that I found that raised red flags was that no other news sources were talking about this. No other, CNN wasn't talking about this. MSNBC was not talking about this. At least in the early, I don't know, I haven't checked it, and this was like 2 weeks ago. So I was like, well, that's curious, isn't it? Like, this seems like a topic that they would really be interested in reporting in. And why are they posting and responding from a news organization called LBGTQ Nation? Like, wouldn't there be something a little bit more level-headed out there? So I was like, am I going to have to find this fucking bill and read it line for line? So I did like a few more searches, tweaking it here and there. And I found a much more level-headed approach to it. Now, it wasn't from a right-wing source. It's called Metro Weekly, I think. I think it's like a trans website. But in part, this is what it said. If the amendment is not removed before the funding bill is passed by the full House of Representatives, the child placement agencies will be allowed to license and discriminate based on moral or religious beliefs. Still sounds pretty bad. And then the next quote pops up. This would not solely affect LGBTQ couples, but heterosexual couples. Do you hear that? There's crickets. A fucking tumbleweed just rolled past me. There's a door. I'm in outer space. There's a Barbie doll with hair floating through. Like, I'm in the fucking Twilight Zone. This would not solely affect LGBTQ couples, but heterosexual couples and single parents who could be discriminated based on their religion, their disability, their political beliefs, or if they've ever been divorced, or any other characteristic or trait an agency employee could deem objectionable. Now, to me, it seems like this should be hailed as an inclusive bill. They're including the LGBTQ community with heterosexual couples and even the single parents. Whether you have a stable home life or an unstable home life. So I read this, and it's like I said, it's coming from like this, I guess it's a tranny website, or it's definitely a low T kind of website. So I'm reading this and I'm like, what is all this about? Even this tranny site says it wouldn't solely affect the LGBTQ couples, but heterosexual couples. And guess what? Single parents. And the first thing that I thought of immediately was that the episode that we talked about the outrage of the media selective, I think it was called like selective outrage or something, where we talked about in 2013, when these kids were pouring across the border, and the Obama administration basically gave them to child traffickers and egg farmers. Remember that? You should go check out that episode because it's crazy. And so I thought, like, well, maybe we do need some more stringent rules on where we're placing these poor kids, you know, rather than being slaves on an egg farm or being given to human traffickers. So I did reach out to my friend. We have a running Facebook Messenger conversation. And so this is what I said. Hold on, here we go. I said, hey man, I'm not going to post this and get dogpiled by your friends on Facebook, but this news item you got from LGBTQ Nation is crazy. I've been ignoring this story for days, but here I go. The bill they're talking about isn't even necessarily leveled against LGBT couples. And then I quote the Metro Weekly or whatever it's called. I quote that thing: heterosexual couples and single parents who could be discriminated against based on their religion, disability, political beliefs, whether they've ever been divorced, or have any other character traits that could deem that an agency employee could deem objectionable. It seems like these agencies should just be a lot more judgmental when placing kids. I just did some stories on an episode where the government placed a bunch of kids at a foster home and the people turned out to be human traffickers. Or another one where kids ended up working as slaves on an egg farm in Ohio. I think these agencies should have a lot of wiggle room to exclude people, especially in the age of outrage and subsequent litigation. Any couple at all should be excluded for any reason, I think. And I still think that. This is the point, not keeping kids out of the hands of gay couples. I have been struggling with how to respond, but the article makes it so like that if you see it any other way, you support not letting kids be raised by gay people. I think it's about protecting the people who have to make these difficult decisions. I'm sorry to bring it up here. Like I said, I'm not feeling into the FB hate today. Towers, over and out. So there's two people on this thread, and they both respond, and I also included, I said, I mean, I love gay couples. I cried when Cam and Mitch got married, which isn't true. I didn't cry when they got married. I cried when they proposed to each other. Okay, so, and then I start getting cheeky, and I was like, hold on, I got a funny idea. I'm going to rewrite this whole article citing the same information in the same bill and name it Democrats support bill to allow anyone to adopt children despite stability, physical ability, mental ability, and even weird cult members. And that one Republican. All the Democrats and that one Republican, because we're talking about a vote down party lines. He responded to this, and I thought it was strange. And he said, see, I have not seen that angle on any of the articles that I've read. And I'm like, bro, how many articles did you read? Because there's only like 2 out there. Like I said, okay, so I go and I say, I did one Google search, CNN, MSNBC, Fox. No one is talking about this except for these hardcore LGBT sites. The most level-headed reporting I found on it was one of these trans sites called Metro News. This is wrong. It was called Metro Weekly. This is actually quoted above. But, you know, people just read a crazy headline, and then that in 320 comments or less, it's fucking politics shark attacks with all your friends. 32 comments, I mean, whatever. So, I think you get the gist of my plight and my response. but that really stuck with me, and I was like, what is that? What is this need just to post and weigh in so emphatically on something that you don't understand, you haven't looked at? I don't know. So the last effect we're going to be talking about is the last media effect we're going to talk about is uses and gratification theory. Practitioners of the uses and gratification theory study the way the public consumes media. This theory states that consumers use media to satisfy a specific need or desire. For example, you may enjoy watching a show like Dancing with the Stars while simultaneously tweeting about it on Twitter with your friends. Many people use the internet to seek out entertainment, to find information, to communicate with like-minded individuals, or to pursue self-expression. Each of these users gratify a particular need, and the needs determine the way in which media is used. By example, factors of differing groups' media choices research can determine the motivation behind the media use. A typical use and gratification study explores the motive for media consumption and the consequences associated with the use of that media. In the case of Dancing with the Stars and Twitter, you are using the internet in a way to be entertained and to connect with your friends. Research has identified a number of common motives for media consumption. These include relaxation, social interaction, entertainment, arousal in a way, and escape, the host of interpersonal and social needs. By examining and motives behind the consumption of a particular form of media, researchers can better understand the reason for the medium's popularity and the roles the medium fills in society. Studying the motives given behind the user's interaction with Facebook, for example, could explain the role Facebook has taken in society and the reason for its appeal. Okay. Uses and gratification theories of media are often applied to contemporary media issues. The analysis of the relationship between media and violence that you read about preceding sections exemplifies this. Researchers employed with uses and gratifications theory in this case reveal a nuanced set of circumstances surrounding violent media consumption, and individuals with aggressive tendencies are drawn to violent media. Now, I don't know if I would like to push this forward. I don't know if I can't believe that I invented this, but it was a thought formed in my head. The uses and gratification theory of mass media as it applies to social media. So I'm saying that my friend that was able to post this news article did so to and with such heavy statements. Maybe the gratification that he received was a virtue signal, right? And some people don't know. Some normies don't know what this means. So some people that haven't been to war with social justice warriors don't know what virtue signaling is. So I've taken the opportunity to print out a Wikipedia definition of virtue signaling. Virtue signaling is the conspicuous expression of moral values. In terms it was first used in signaling theory, which has to do with nonverbal communication, specifically between animals in mating season or in mating rituals, to describe any behavior that could be used to signal virtue, especially piety among the religious. Now, This specific case, I have to also, full disclosure, I have to tell you that the guy that posted this, LGBTQ Nation quote news item, the guy that posted this has some lipstick lesbian neighbors, and dog, you know what, I think that you might understand what I'm saying. I think you might get it. To describe any behavior that can be used to signal virtue, especially piety, among the religious. In recent years, the term has become more commonly used as a pejorative by commentators who criticize what they regard as an empty or superficial support of certain political views. Boom. I'm just going to drop the... hold on. No, I'm not going to drop my mic. I paid money for it. And also used within groups to criticize their own members for valuing appearance over action. So, like I said, as I'm talking about these different media effects, this uses and gratification theory really popped out to me. Because they're not talking like they maybe in a past decades, they're talking about, you know, like it's prestigious to get your news from, you know, like CNN. Meanwhile, the only people watching CNN are the people in airports or in office buildings. Like, there's no one watches CNN. There's actually the last ratings that came out. The fucking Food Network's getting more ratings than CNN. So it's like, you know, remember when they used to have Darth Vader did the voice, "This is CNN." Like, those days are gone. Those days are gone. Don Lemon is an idiot. But, so as I was thinking about this uses and gratification, that's what I was thinking about. I was like, oh, this is like, I feel special because I get my news from CNN or something. But I thought it could take a whole new sort of meaning. Like, they're actually getting some sort of like, some sort of dopamine hit or something. Like, look, I'm going to post this into the fucking mosh pit of my Facebook and everyone's going to agree with me. Fucking everyone's going to agree with me. Those fucking Republicans need to be skinned and dragged down the street. And I believe in this age of outrage. I believe that posting things like this, they have just a fucking modicum of like any sort of credibility, but it's like, oh boy, it's a website and LGBTQ's in the title, like they must have got to know what they're talking about with this topic. But the response of, oh, I didn't see any of the news articles I read didn't bring this angle up. It was jarring to me. It was just like, it was like throwing cold water on my face. It was like dumping cold water into my nether regions. Like, because I just don't consume news like that. Like, I'm like, I need to triple check any article that I read. Basically, it's a triple check, and especially as incendiary as the headlines and stuff were. Like, well, we need to double check this. And then on the Google check, like, CNN, nothing. MSNBC, nothing. Fox News, nothing. Like, no one took this news the way that these people took it. Everybody, like I said, 320 fucking people or whatever, like, were lighting themselves on fire. So, I guess I just been trying to deal with that, and hopefully this will fucking put it to bed for me, because I'm done. I hope everybody learned something. Hey, when I was going through those different media effects, did you guys think of anything that I didn't mention? Like, can you, like, I don't know, look at media and find examples? I would love to hear the examples that you guys could find listening to those. And this is a topic we're going to tackle again. I got my fucking sight set on the CNN effect for sure. So, with that being said, I think I'm going to end this evening. I went pretty long, bros. I went pretty long. I'm gonna jump in the pool and see if I can't get my wife to go scuba dive, go snorkeling, if you know what I mean. Snorkeling, you get it?
Stigmata Studios presents The Scorpion Strikes. In this comic book, a terrorist called the Scorpion is transported to a secret CIA prison. He quickly turns the tables on the guards and administrators and releases the prisoners. A well-armed anarchist called Constituent Zero assembles a team and fights to take the prison back. The story is a dark political action thriller. The Scorpion's actions set the stage perfectly for the Jin Jihad. Available on Indie Planet. Get more info on The Scorpion Strikes, the Jin Jihad, and other titles at stigmatastudios.com. Stigmata Studios presents The Test of the Scorpion. In this comic book, while the Jin Jihad is raging on one side of the city, the terrorist called the Scorpion sets a secondary attack in motion as he obtains a small tactical nuclear bomb. A mysterious, ever-living warrior called Cyrus the Dead Guy steps forward to test the faith of the Scorpion and his lunatic followers. This is an action-adventure story. It's a bit of swashbuckler that wraps up the Jihad stories. Available on Indie Planet. Get more info on The Scorpion Strikes, the Jin Jihad, The Test of the Scorpion, and other titles at stigmatastudios.com.